All of this just happened, and I'm still trying to process it. I've always been into crime documentaries and real-life mystery shows, the kind that make you extra cautious when something feels off. And honestly, I believe watching those shows helped me stay alert today. Because if I hadn't been, I don't even want to imagine how differently things could have ended. Let me back up. Right now, my wife and I aren't living together. Things have been tense. She's been unpredictable lately, especially around our daughter. So I've been the one taking care of her. Our little girl is almost 18 months old, and she's the center of my entire world. I'm currently between jobs, but my mom has been helping a lot. It hasn't been easy, but we're managing. Around 4 p.m. today, I took my daughter to the store, like I usually do after her nap. She's very active, chatty, wiggly, and curious, so shopping with her is always an adventure. Normally, we'd just go for juice, but we were out of some essentials: flour, sugar, noodles, and I remembered we needed milk, too. I had my hands full, so I couldn't hold her hand like I usually do. I walked just behind her, encouraging her to stay close. Of course, she kept stopping to look at colorful packages or poke things on the lower shelves. I kept nudging her along, trying not to sound frustrated. Looking back, I should have just grabbed a basket. When we finally reached the front, Register 1 was open. It's right next to the customer service desk near the entrance. While we waited, I kept her entertained with games like Patty Cake and Itsy Bitsy Spider to stop her from wandering off. She waved at people walking by, squealing, "Hi!" like she always does. Most people smiled and waved back. Some even stopped to say how adorable she was. I'm used to it. She's like a little sunshine magnet. The cashier was still helping someone with a return. I told my daughter to hold my hand while I got ready to pay. I let go for just a second to pull out my debit card, glancing at her every few seconds to make sure she hadn't wandered off. Everything seemed normal. Until the cashier suddenly shouted, "What are you doing with his daughter?" I turned around, just in time to see a man lifting my daughter into his arms and running toward the exit. The doors didn't open, thankfully. They're one-way doors that only open for incoming customers. The cashier grabbed the phone and started calling the police while I stood there, frozen, trying to comprehend what was happening right in front of me. Then my instincts kicked in. I bolted after him. I usually carry a pocket knife for practical things, opening seals on bottles and such. I considered pulling it out, but decided against it. I didn't want to escalate the situation. I sprinted after the guy just as someone entered through the outer doors. Before the man could slip past them, I punched him square in the side of the head. He stumbled. I grabbed my daughter out of his arms. She was crying, but physically unharmed. The man ran off empty-handed, disappearing into the parking lot. The police arrived within 5 minutes. I gave them every detail I could remember. I hadn't seen his face clearly. He had long, messy hair, a beard, and wore a hoodie. Officers canvassed the area, spoke to witnesses, and tried to track him down. Someone said they saw him running behind the building, but they didn't catch him that day. After taking our statements, 2 officers offered to drive us home. Once there, they asked more questions. Had I seen the man before? Could I think of anyone suspicious? What was our home situation like? I told them everything, including that Child Protective Services had already visited earlier that day to check in on my wife's mental health. They listened carefully, gave me their cards, and promised to follow up. About 20 minutes after they left, I got another knock on the door. It was the same officers, but this time, they were carrying the biggest box of diapers I've ever seen, along with wipes, 6 huge grocery bags full of food, some toys, and a card. After they left, I opened the card. Inside it said, "You're a strong father. Your daughter is lucky to have you." There was also a $100 bill with a note that said, "Get yourself a drink or whatever you need." I don't drink, but I'm going to use that money to buy something nice for my daughter and my mom. After everything we've been through, they deserve it.
This is a true story, real as anything that's ever happened to me. I'm 60 now. I've lived a full life, raised a family, and I'm a grandmother. But this memory is still sharp. It's one of those moments that never fades, no matter how much time passes. Back in 1986, I was heading home after a summer working in Yellowstone National Park. I made a quick stop in Topeka, Kansas, to visit a friend who had just moved there with his parents after graduating high school. What was meant to be a short visit turned into a week, and his family invited me to stay one extra day to join them for a big family reunion out in the countryside. We took his beat-up old car, the kind that had seen better days and had a broken gas gauge. We spent the entire day out in the middle of nowhere with his extended family, eating, chatting, and enjoying the sunshine. As the sun started to dip, we hit the road back to Topeka, assuming we had enough gas to get there. Big surprise, we didn't. The car sputtered and died on the side of an empty rural road. My friend guessed we were about 6 or 7 miles from the nearest gas station. No cell phones back then. We were trying to figure out what to do when a white work van with no windows pulled up beside us. It looked rough, the kind of vehicle you instinctively don't trust. A man leaned out from the passenger side and asked if we needed help. When you're that age, you think people are just being kind. When you're older, you realize how lucky you were that things didn't go another way. We told them we were out of gas. They offered us a ride to the station, and without much thought, we agreed. Once we got into the van, we realized there were 3 men inside. There were no seats in the back, just an empty, worn-out cargo space. We sat on the floor. That's when we clearly heard the men talking about doing something to us. The driver mentioned he knew a good place. The man in the passenger seat looked at me and agreed. My mind was only just catching up to what was going on when the third man, the one sitting closest to us, spoke up. He said, "I'm not in. I don't want anything to do with this. I've got a baby now, and I'm not okay with this." I repeated, he wanted no part in whatever was about to happen. The other 2 mumbled something I couldn't hear. Then there was a tense silence. My mind just repeated one word: help. I felt like I couldn't think straight. Part of me was in denial, part in shock. The fear hadn't even fully hit yet. It was like watching a horror movie happen to someone else. Less than an hour earlier, I had felt completely safe. Now, the idea that someone might kill me or do something equally awful and leave us where no one would ever find us was all I could think about. I couldn't stop those thoughts from racing. If you've ever been to Kansas, you'll know there are endless, desolate roads, empty and God-forsaken. If that third guy hadn't spoken up or even just said, "Let them out first," I don't think I'd be here telling you the story. That's when they stopped talking. They never spoke to us directly after we got in. My friend and I didn't speak to each other either. We were too terrified. I could hear every creak and rattle of that van. I saw my friend tense his muscles as if to say he'd fight if he had to. The men continued talking about where it'd take us. Then suddenly, the guy in the back said it again: "No." And just like that, the driver pulled over. The man in the back opened the door and let us out. It was over. When we stepped out, the air felt strange, fragile, and tainted. The ground didn't even feel real. My friend looked as shaken as I felt. We had survived a close encounter with darkness, predators in human form. I saw the gas station under the fading light of sunset. It looked like a glowing beacon of safety.
I knew that once we reached it, there was no way I was walking back to that car. As the white van pulled away, it felt like watching a nightmare dissolve, but part of me still feared it might suck us back in. To this day, when I close my eyes, I can still see that van driving off, like a mirage from a nightmare that somehow leaked into real life.
I'll try to keep this story short, but what makes it truly creepy are the details. On a whim, my mom and I decided to visit Nevada City, California. It's an old Victorian-era mining and logging town, built in 1856. If you Google pictures of it, you'll see what I mean. It looks haunted even in broad daylight. After grabbing lunch at a brew pub, we wandered over to the massive Pioneer Historical Cemetery on the outskirts of town. It wasn't quite dusk yet, but the trees in that area are incredibly tall, so it's hard to tell the time of day. It always feels later than it really is. The cemetery was enormous, like most pioneer graveyards, due to the high mortality rate back then. So many child graves, it was heartbreaking. At first, the cemetery looked traditional. Large, ornate tombstones, family plots, marble obelisks, mausoleums. But then it just kept going, stretching deep into the woods. The further we walked, the wilder and more overgrown it got, until eventually we couldn't tell where the cemetery ended and the forest began. Graves were scattered and hard to recognize. We even saw signs of old homeless camps, abandoned tents, trash, scraps of clothing. Eventually the trees end out and we came into a clearing. There was a tall juniper tree and thick brush around it, with a few random graves here and there. As I was walking, I tripped over something. It was a purse, a designer bag, but it looked ancient, like it had been lying there for years. When I looked up, about 10 yards ahead, I saw what looked like a pile of women's clothing. Then I noticed a tangled mess of hair, and I froze. It's hard to explain, but I knew it was a dead body. I hadn't even fully seen it, but my gut just screamed it. I instinctively reached out and stopped my mom behind me. "Get your phone. Call 911. That's a body." She didn't even question me, just started dialing 911. She must have felt it too. Then things got bizarre. While we were talking, distracted, we glanced back, and I swear to God, the woman was now sitting up. Her back was to us. She wore a bright red trench coat, and her filthy blonde hair stuck up in every direction, almost defying gravity from how matted it was. Slowly, like something out of a horror movie, she turned her head over her shoulder and locked eyes with us. That's when we realized she wasn't dead. She jumped to her feet with terrifying speed and fully turned to face us. Her clothes were shredded, barely covering her body. She started lurching toward us in a jerky, unnatural way. Her hands fumbled as she tried to keep herself covered. My first thought was that maybe she had been assaulted. She tried to speak but couldn't form real words, only high-pitched squeaking sounds. When she got closer, she stopped and pointed excitedly at the purse I had tripped over. I asked if it was hers. Her expression changed instantly into the most disturbing smirk I've ever seen, one that still haunts me. And then she started undressing, slowly, deliberately. We had to shout at her to stop. By then, the police were already on their way. We told them we'd found someone in serious distress, but even as we said that, we knew we were not safe. We backed away slowly, then turned and got out of there as quickly as we could. Later, we followed up with the police out of concern and, honestly, morbid curiosity. They said no one was there when they arrived. No sign of her? Nothing. I pray she got the help she needed, but I'll never forget the way she looked at us.
and I'll never set foot in that cemetery again.
Back in 1998 or 1999, I was about 5 or 6 years old, living in a rough part of downtown, an area known for crime and drugs. Our house had a huge backyard, but it was completely overgrown, like a wild jungle of trees and dense bushes. Nature had reclaimed it, along with the occasional stranger passing through. We knew that because we'd often find used needles scattered around, and even a half mattress that somehow ended up stuck 15 feet high in the trees. There was a narrow path in the back that people used as a shortcut to the main road, so we saw a lot of sketchy foot traffic. For a child, that backyard was a nightmare. I hated it from the moment we moved in. I kept telling my mom that someone was watching me through my bedroom window at night. A couple of times I even saw flashlights shine into my room, and once I caught a glimpse of a face. I still remember those dark, piercing eyes. At first, I didn't say anything, but eventually I told my mom. She brushed it off as a bad dream. She kept ignoring my complaints for a week or two, even though I was insistent. One night, after struggling to calm me down, she decided to prove there was nothing out there. The next morning, she took me outside to show me, but what we saw changed everything. Right beneath my window, the grass had been completely flattened into mud. The ground was damp and dead-looking. There were scratches on the window frame as if someone had tried to pry it open with a tool. It was a small basement window, the kind that doesn't open easily. That might have been what saved me. My mom was horrified. She wanted to move immediately, but we were broke. Leaving just wasn't an option. Around that time, I'd become best friends with the girl who lived next door. We were inseparable. We didn't understand danger back then, and often did dumb things, like going door to door asking neighbors for candy. One of our favorite stops was a sweet elderly lady who always gave us Hostess cakes. Sometimes she even let us come inside and hang out. She was incredibly kind and looked out for us in her own way. Our parents had no idea that was our little secret. One day, my mom called me home to go pick up dinner just around the corner. We were gone for maybe 15 minutes, but when we returned, everything had changed. Our block was sealed off with police tape. There were news vans, cop cars, and even a helicopter circling above. While we were gone, a man, someone who wasn't from our neighborhood but had been staying with his mother, walked past my best friend's yard. She was just sitting on the porch, talking to the phone and goofing around, but for some reason he thought she was mocking him. He got so angry at the idea that he walked back to his mother's house, grabbed a butcher knife, and came back to hurt her. Thankfully, she saw him coming and ran inside. She locked herself in the bathroom and called the police. She still had the phone in her hand. Her mom, though, wasn't so lucky. She had been in the kitchen. The man broke in and attacked her. He stabbed her multiple times. I had originally thought it was over 20 times, but later found a 1998 newspaper article that said it was 7. Miraculously, she survived. After several surgeries and a long recovery, she pulled through. The story made the news. My mom and I followed every update, hoping her mom would be okay. I'll never forget the day they showed the attacker's mugshot on TV, and my blood ran cold. That was the man I'd seen outside my window. The same man who had tried to kill my friend's mom was the one who had watched me sleep. Later, I learned that we had unknowingly met him weeks earlier at the sweet old lady's house. He was her son. He had just been released from prison and was living with her. We had met him during one of our candy visits, and apparently, from that moment on, he had been watching us. I don't remember him from that first encounter,
But maybe if I had recognized something, I could have told someone. Maybe none of this would have happened. We never ended up moving. My mom figured since he was in jail, the danger was over, so we stayed for a few more years. But to this day, I cannot sleep in a room with open blinds. To the man who used to watch me sleep, who tried to take a mother from a child, I hope I never see you again. And I hope you're rotting in prison.